You're welcome. You're welcome to another webinar session hosted by Plus-CircleCommunityHealth Advancement Organization. You're welcome to today's webinar session where we'll be discussing effective strategies for communicating research findings to non-scientific audiences. This session is proudly brought to you by Plus-CircleCommunityHealth Advancement Organization, a non-profit organization that is dedicated to improving healthcare in Nigeria through school health outreaches, research, and community engagement. The organization has been involved in a couple of outreaches and conducted various researches that has impacted healthcare in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please, for this session, there are a few guidelines that we will be following. First, if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, you can put the question in the chat box during the presentation, or you wait until after the presentation during the question and answer session, where you can utilize the raise hand icon or hand raise icon, pardon me, and then you'll be called upon to ask your question. I'll take that one more time. During the session, if you have any questions, you can either put your question in the chat box at any time during the presentation, or you note your questions down, and during the question and answer session after the presentation, use the hand raise icon, and then you'll be called upon to ask your question. Please, you can also follow us on social media to keep updated and abreast of all our activities. The social media links will be put in the chat box, so you can get a direct link and access to whatever it is we are doing at a particular given time. Without further ado, I'll be introducing our speaker for today. Dr. Zainab is a field epidemiologist. She holds a master's in public health from Walden University and in infectious diseases from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She is currently pursuing a PhD in epidemiology in the University of Port Harcourt. She has interests in One Health, risk communication, and community engagement and public health system strengthening. She is passionate about crafting public health messages for general audience. She is the founder of One Health Messenger and One Health Empowerment Initiatives. She is happily married with 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, to take us on effective strategies for communicating research findings to non-scientific audiences, please let's welcome Dr. Zainab Zambazao. Dr. Zainab, you have the floor, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much for that. And good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining the call. I'll just share my screen so that we can go into the business of the day. So you're all welcome today once again. I remain Dr. Zainab Zambazao. I'm the One Health Messenger, and I hope my screen is clear and my voice is audible enough for everyone to hear. So the first question I would ask before we go in, and you can make use of the chat box as we proceed, what's one message that you've heard of recent, and how did you feel about it? How did it resonate with you? Did you understand it, or did it confuse you? You can make use of the chat box and we'll just take a few responses. So for today, this is the outline of today's session. We have the session objectives. We're going to know our audience. We're going to talk about effective strategies for communicating research findings to non-scientific audiences. And we'll conclude, and I'll just read out my little poem. So our session objectives for today is to learn how to simplify complex research data for diverse audiences, to learn key techniques for making research engaging and relatable, and also to learn best practices for crafting clear, impactful messages that resonate with policymakers, media, and the general public. So before you craft your message, what comes to your mind? We all practice research in one way or the other, either at the home front, you want to know what's happening, or in your field of work, or in the school. So what do? Before you craft your message, there are things that you have to put at the back of your mind. You have to know the demography of your audience. And when I say demography, you have to know their age grouping, their gender, their occupation, so that you would know what to tell them, because you don't want to feed them with information that would not be impactful. You also want to know their cultural background. That is, you want to know their norms, you want to know their values, you want to know their communication styles. Irrespective of who your audience is, they have a tone that is acceptable to them. They have a formality that is also acceptable to them. They also have stories that resonate with their everyday life experiences. You also want to know their knowledge level, and this knowledge level helps you to gauge what or how familiar they are with the subject matter, so that you do not digress from your original message. They also have needs and interests. Olua, I cannot see my screen again from your end, and we have a few responses that I would actually take from the chat box. Thank you. So someone said she had that prima gravida died with twin pregnancy at 39 weeks gestation due to negligence of a private hospital, and she was devastated and she felt very bad. I'm sorry, I don't know why my screen is not moving. Olua, is it from your end? Can you please respond?
We're working on it. Please just give
All
me
right.
a minute,
All right,
please.
thank you. So you have to know their attitudes and their beliefs as well. What do they believe in? What are their preconceived notions? So that you would know how they will judge your interpretation to a certain extent. Because since you know all these things about them, then you'll be able to craft your message accordingly. So now we delve into the business of the day. We all know that research is a powerful tool, but we conduct a lot of research, and what's the use of groundbreaking research if it doesn't reach the people and that can use it, be it policymakers, be it media professionals, be it the general public. So today we are not just talking about science, we're not just talking about public health research, we're not talking about all those technical things alone. We're talking about sparking change, about sharing knowledge to spark change. So research is actually a powerful tool. Research is actually a powerful tool, and it gains a lot of influence when it's been understood. But if it stays locked up in academic journals, we will never realize its true potentials. So we need policymakers to be able to understand our findings so that it will help them to shape laws. We also need journalists to spread the knowledge to people. The people also need that information from your research findings to make informed decisions, those decisions that will make them take actions in the right directions. And whatever we do, we know that there are challenges, and there are a lot of challenges in communicating complex research and complex data, because communication isn't easy, and that's why people quarrel. You would find two people, they would argue for long hours, and at the end of the day, they do not understand what they say, and everybody grows angry. But what causes that? Because there's a communication gap. And wherever there is research and there is public, there is a communication gap. And what we always try to do is to close that communication gap. Because as I said earlier, communication isn't easy. So we want to be able to, as researchers, to translate that scientific information into digestible bites. Because if you go and overload your audience with a lot of information, there'll be information overload. And you're not just dealing with information overload, you're dealing with diverse levels of understanding, and a lot of questions will come from different people. And at the end of the day, they might even try to confuse you if you're not well situated in that study. Also, when you find out that you also find out that people have shorter attention spans. For instance, you conducted the research, you went for a presentation, you have 1 hour to present, and people start standing up to make phone calls, or they start standing up to go and make some tea. You just know that the attention span has become short, very short, that you cannot imagine how short you are. So it means that you are not communicating to them, but you want to keep them in the loop of what you are doing. So you don't want to go overboard to now start telling them everything about your study, especially if you know your audience. And for the objective of today, we are talking about crafting messages or sending messages out to non-scientific audiences. So we need to simplify our data. And by simplifying our data, first rule I always put in mind is do not dumb down your findings. Do not water it down. All you need to is to distill it to the core and to the level that people will understand. Do not change your findings because you want to simplify your data, or because you want to simplify your findings. So it's a rule, don't dumb down your findings ever. And also, every audience you go to, they have a thought. What's that thought? Why should I care? Why are you even coming to me with this? You're coming to tell me to wash my hands. How does it affect me? What do I do with that? Okay, what if I don't wash my hands? There's a story that a friend shared with me years back while I was in the university. He stays in Jos around NVRI, and they have a lot of community people that play outside. They have stores and all that in a little community close to the center. And there was a day, what we normally do, I think 90% of people, I don't have evidence on that, but I know that people do that a lot. And you buy, when we used to have these Coke bottles, what people do is they open the Coke bottle, you clean your Coke bottle, and after cleaning your Coke bottle, with your hands, without washing your hands, you are assuming that you have cleaned that bottle, and you just directly take it to your mouth because they said, okay, clean your Coke bottle because sometimes it has rust. So this particular guy used his dirty hands, cleaned the Coke bottle, and drank. After an hour or two, he started having bloated stomach, and his stomach was really, really bloated. He had to be rushed to the emergency. And after some test and all that, it was realized that, okay, he had Clostridium botulinum. So that was an opportunity for public health officials and even laboratorians to go to the community to educate them on, okay, don't use your bare hands to clean your bottle. So they should care. So why should I care is the first question. You're coming to me with a lot of findings, a lot of data, and your role as a communicator is to answer that clearly and concisely. Next slide, please. I think it's not moving again from my end. So let's compare this. Can you see the graphs that I'm sharing? Thank you. So I think you'll move the slides from your end, please. So these are two graphs, and you go to people with graph A, to non-scientific audience. For me, if I was a non-scientific audience, honestly, I would not even look at it because it's quite a lot, too many colors, too many things to look at. The legend is quite long, and I'll say, oh, how would I ever understand what the blue means, what the yellow means, and what the red means, or what the pink means? But if you go to B, and it's very plain and very clear, you could tell that, okay, these are settlements or communities or states in India, and you have Delhi, Bihar, you could see, okay, these are the number of students they have. You have your legend, you have your axis on the left, you have your vertical and horizontal axis, but you could tell that it's speaking to communities in India, and it's telling you the number of students. So this is very digestible for audiences that are non-scientific. Can you move to the next slide, please? For instance, if you go to policymakers, what do you want to tell them? You want to tell them the impacts or your research findings. You want to always tie your research findings to the interests of your audience all the time. So for instance, if I read this, our model shows that we could prevent 30 million people from getting infected. You're telling the policymaker that you're targeting 30 million people, and you're telling him that you're targeting them by the year 2030. But what do they have to do? They have to increase coverage of insecticide-treated nets, of indoor residual sprays and anti-malarial medications. You're telling them what to do. You're not coming to fill them with technical jargons. Oh, I developed a model. I conducted a research. I went for a cross-sectional study. Oh, I did a cohort study. You're not filling them up with those technical jargons because it will not even resonate with them, because what they want to know is what you have found out, your findings. And you just tell them straight to the point because they don't have time. Next slide, please. So what are the techniques for simplifications? Another rule. I've given you one rule. Do not dumb down your findings. Number two, do not oversimplify. Because when you simplify, you water it down so much. So do not oversimplify. Look at your findings. Give it to them as simple as possible. And another thing is, analogies and metaphors should be your best friends, because you want to people to understand that these are real life experiences and these are real-time experiences that, okay, you can compare them to what really happens. If you say time is a thief, we know that time is not a thief, but we understand that analogy and metaphor, that time is a thief. We understand that metaphor. You're not comparing, you're directly analyzing it to that instance. And if you use analogies for your messages, you want to compare. Okay, you want to tell them that the computer is like a brain. We know that the computer is not a brain, but the brain is like a computer, sorry. We know that the brain is not a computer, but it receives information, it processes it, and it gives output. So you want to be able to let them understand that this is what you're doing. So you have to come down to their level of non-scientists and tell them, okay, you find this, you're talking about the immune system, and you just make an example, okay, like an army guard or people that are going for war, and they have this army of people that's and they're ready at any moment to attack or to attack the enemy, right? So that's how the immune system works. So you have to break it down for people to understand. And also you have to break your messages into bite-sized pieces. So just imagine I make two and I have a child and I just keep on lumping the two into the mouth of the child. How would that child swallow it? He would end up throwing it up. So same as your message. And now I'm giving you an analogy. I'm comparing real life experiences to what really to science. So the person will throw it up. So you can't do that to people's brain as well. So you have to break down your messages into bite-sized pieces. They have to take in the message. It has to go through a process in their brain for them to understand it. And they now give you an output. And what output are you looking for? You're looking for a positive impact. So you learn to focus on one key finding at a time. You will go for research, you find a lot of findings, you're happy about it, you want to tell it all out at the same time. But no, focus on one key finding at a time when you're going to the general audience, or rather the non-scientific audience. For instance, I give this example of epidemiological variants. So I cannot just go to my audience and tell them, oh, there's an epidemiological variant. They'll just be looking at me like, is she coming from space? But when I tell them that there are changes in disease spread over the years, or there have been changes of disease spread of Lassa fever over the years, I should be making quite some sense to them. Thank you. And next slide, please. So I gave this example already with the brain and the computer. So it's an analogy you're comparing. So how do you make your research engaging and relatable? You have gone for your research, you have conducted a study, you have your findings, you are happy about it, you have published it in high-level journals. But who do you want it to get to? You want it to get to someone, and you want it to get somewhere. So you know that we have facts that 1 in 9 people die every year from rabies. We have facts that if one person has Ebola, it's an outbreak and people will die. If one person has polio, it could affect a lot of people. So we have all those facts, but do they really move people? No, they don't, because you're just going to them with numbers, but stories do. So to make your findings engaging and relatable to your audience, you have to tell it to them in stories. Research is a story. Last week, the presenter told us that if you joined, it was an excellent session. And you also have to humanize your data. By humanizing your data, you have to tell them that it actually resonates with them. That is why that target audience analysis is very, very important, so that you go to them with a message that resonates them from your data. You can pick one thing out of your data and translate it to them. It's a complex thing to them. So, but you have to translate it to them. You have to relate it to everyday experiences, because what you want to do is to offer solutions to real world problems. So you always have to remember that when sending out your message. Storytelling is a tool. And when I say it's a tool, it's a mystery. We got a problem. We researched on the problem to ensure that that problem, is it true or false? We want to uncover a mystery. It's like a maze. You have a maze and you play the game and you go all the way to find out the way out. You start from a starting point, you have an ending point, and you begin with a problem, because it's always a problem that makes you to want to conduct a study in whichever profession you're from. I know in this on this call, we have people from different professions, but we all conduct researches in one way or the other. And that's why we're all here today, because that interest has brought us together. So we have a common interest, and that's the analysis that people do, or the founders have done. So you introduce your research as a key tool, because it's a tool. That's what is driving you to communicate your message. But without ending it with a solution or insight, you're not communicating. You have conducted the research. You have used it as a tool, and you want to communicate your insights. So you imagine, for instance, let's all imagine in our brains, let's use that computer brain. Now it's really, really hot. The season is hot, and a lot of deforestation have been occurring around globally. But let's come back to the context of Nigeria. There's a lot of deforestation, which has led to a lot of diseases, a lot of outbreaks. But let's talk about the weather. You conduct a research and you found out that trees in urban areas are being cut down, they're fell. And we found out that cooling down temperatures, by planting trees, it will cool down temperatures and make life more bearable for millions. So that's why you see some organizations or some people now form a group, and you see, oh, today is a tree planting day. Come and join us. They are doing it for a reason, because research communication or research findings have gotten to them that if they plant trees, it can cool down temperatures by 2 to 3 degrees, which is quite a lot. And you have impacted people, and people start to take those strategic steps. If there's anything you want to share with us in the chat box, please feel free to do so, based on real-time experiences or communication issues that you've actually heard about that has made impacts to you as a policymaker, as a media professional, or if you're in the general public. Next slide, please. Next, please. So your storytelling is still a tool, and we're still on that section. So you want to use visual insights when crafting your message, even if be it a video, be it a newsletter. You ought to use natural insights, be it you're using your voice what you want to do is you want people to look at it, to think about it, even before they read or they listen, because people have feelings. And for instance, if you look at this newsletter on the right side of your screen, you'd see the dog. What does it tell you? It looks like a very dangerous dog that if it bites you, there'll be a big problem. So you also want to, I told you that analogies and metaphors should be your friends, because you want to bridge the gap between the known and unknown. This is what you know, and this is what they don't know. So you want to bridge that gap for them to understand where you're coming from. So you have to bring it down to the level of their lens, but still don't forget, don't dump down your findings. So you want to clarify ideas by showing that two different things are alike. Next slide. Your messages should be clear, they should be concise, and they should be meaningful, because your non-scientific audience have very short attention span. So you don't want to bore them with a lot. When I started writing for the One Health Messenger, I wrote a three-pager, and I sat down and asked myself, Zainab, is this something that you would read if somebody sends it out to you? I love this example because it resonates with me. It's a real life experience. And I said, no, I'm not going to. I have a busy day. I have children, I have a family, I have parents, and I have a lot of things to do. And I cannot just sit down just to read a three-pager because I want to change people. So I decided to, okay, because people have this short attention span, you just make it concise and make it meaningful. And you always ask yourself, what do you want them to remember? What one thing do you want them to remember from your message, from your scientific findings? What do you want your non-scientific audience to remember? Always ask yourself. It's a question that you should always ask yourself when sending out messages. Then simplify it in a single sentence. You have a long draft to present, but there is one thing, you have your SOGO that you want them to go with. So always remember your SOGO and simplify that SOGO in a single sentence. Next slide, please. So for the objective of this, one of the objectives of our session was to tell us how to send it out to policymakers, to the media professionals, and general public. So when sending out messages or when communicating your research findings with policymakers, you have to make it focus on the actionable insights. They don't want lengthy explanations. They don't have time. You have a few minutes, they'll tell you, okay, make a 10-minute presentation, make a 5-minute presentation. So just go to the actionable insights on how your research addresses their challenges. They come to listen to you because they have challenges. They want to eradicate or they want to eliminate a particular disease. You just tell them, okay, you found out that this is what you do. This is the impact Lassa fever has on the community, and this is what should be done to tackle that. For the media, you keep it short and you keep it attention. You have to make it attention grabbing. So you have to remember your analogies, your metaphors. You have to translate research findings into headlines. That's why you'll just see 100 people died from Ebola. It might not be 100 people, but what the media people do is they grab your attention. So it has to be attention grabbing. And for the general public, you have to relate it to everyday life. That's why I gave that example of the Clostridium botulinum example, so that people would relate it to everyday life, because these are things that we do. You tell us to wash our hands, but why do you tell us to wash our hands? Because we transmit diseases from our hands. Why do you tell us to wash it for 20 seconds? Why do you teach children to sing happy birthday to you until they're done, to sing, to wash their hands? You have to tell people reasons why they should do things, and you avoid technical jargons. I hope I've avoided a lot of them while presenting. So in conclusion, you have to integrate your strategies. All the strategies have to be integrated in no particular order. It's not cast on stone that you have to do this before you do this, but you have to keep in mind that you have to integrate your strategies to make sure that you communicate to your non-scientific audience, you simplify your messages, you focus on insight, you engage them by turning facts into narratives, because people love stories and stories that actually resonate with them. And also always remember to tailor your messages to your audience. Don't say, no, everybody is my audience. If everybody is your audience, how then do you break down that information to your non-scientific audience. So you have to know, even among the non-scientific audience, who your audience is. Next slide, please. So this is my poem, and I say words like rivers flow with care to bridge the gap, and hearts we share. With clarity, we paint the scene so all may grasp what's once unseen. Thank you for listening. And over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zainab. That was a powerful but simple session. I guess you literally embodied the topic you presented, and thank you so much. So now we are done with the presentation, and we can take questions now. Yes, we can drop our clapping icons on the chat and show our appreciation to our presenter. So we can, if you have any questions, you can either put it in the chat box, or you can use the raise hand. You can use the raise hand icon. So I'll be going through the chat to check if we have any questions. Okay. Once again, you can follow us on our social media pages to keep up to date with our work, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, and then there's an email address and the phone number you can always reach out to if you have questions or clarification. So, effective strategies for communicating research findings to non-scientific audiences. Okay, while we are still waiting for people to put their thoughts together and come up with questions, I myself have a question. I was taking some notes during the session because this is something that has always been, okay, yeah, here, this you, please, you have the floor. I'll take my question later.
Well, since you said good morning, moderator, thank you very much, our guest presenter, Dr. Zainab. Congratulations. This has been very, very insightful, and a lot of insight that I have personally gained from this. With regards to who your audience is, I know that when it comes to policy makers, but each time you are engaging them, one, they don't even have time, apart from the attention span you are even talking about, because they have a lot of competing priorities. So you're also competing with some other things. So do we also consider some of these potential barriers to our approach to them? And that's why they tell us 1 minute speech, elevator speech. If you have a situation, you have to summarize a complex research in 5 minutes. Sometimes a chairman or governor or policymaker or senator has given you an appointment for 30 minutes. But you get there, they say, sorry, something happened now. Mr. President just called us. Can you talk about this in 5 minutes? So how do you prioritize, and what do you do in terms of how to get your message across? And is there anything we can do like this? Sometimes you get there and what you want to say, you don't have time. Even in the media, there are times I'm on the interview on the TV and I've already planned to stay 1, 2, 3, 4. And they tell me I will appear between 30 and 9. And they called me in around 10 minutes to 9 because the last guest extended beyond the time required. And they now say, after the first question, you are thinking there's going to be a follow-up question. They say, viewer, sorry, we will end it up there. And the next time we'll get Dr. So back. And then you miss that opportunity. So how do we address such things? And when you have interesting research findings to share? Thank you.
All right. Are we taking the questions one by one? Thank you so much, Dr. Disu. So, as I said during my presentation, policymakers do not have time. So to address that, that's why I said you go straight to the point. You give them, you tell your findings, to the impact it will make based on their interests. That's just what you do. That's why initially I give that instance of how many people are you looking at? What do you want them to do? How do you want them to do it? Based on your research findings, you have found this, and this is the targeted strategic plan that you have, that you are sending out to them, or that you want to tell them to do. So that's just how you address that, because you could have just 1 minute to present actually. Thank you, and over.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. I hope that answered the question. Dr. Okay, I've seen your comments, thank you. So before we take the next question, there's a link to a feedback survey that will be put in the group page, in the chat box rather. Please kindly click the link and share your feedback on today's session to make suggestions on how to make these sessions more impactful and more comprehensive for you. Once again, there's a feedback survey link that has been put in the chat box to help us do better, to help us take your feedbacks regarding these sessions on how to make it better. Please kindly click on the link and fill them. Thank you very much. So I think I'll take Utman Alao. I'll take Collins Okenyi. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. And then I think there's a question in the chat box. So Mr. Utman Alao, please, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. So thank you very much, Dr. Zainab, for the presentation. Very informative. So my question is this. So in situations where you have to synchronize your information across government levels, I mean in terms of federal, state, and local governments, bearing in mind that they have different priorities, right? And then you still want them to get things done. How do you prioritize your communication? Is it appropriate for you? Of course, we know federal governments have the most high budget to implement, but at each state, most of them actually prioritize different things. How do you best engage with these government level officials? Just maybe you want them to make actions on what you want to communicate with them from the research findings that you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. So that's why I said you take it in bite sizes and you have to do an audience segmentation. You cannot give the same audience the same message. But if you want to do something like that, you have to make sure that if you're going at 3 levels of the government, you have to ensure that it aligns with their policies. It also aligns with their frameworks. Because if their policies, even if there are different levels of government and their policies and frameworks do not align, at the end of the day, you'll, instead of communicating, you'll end up not communicating because it will be quite a lot. So you can do a targeted, you can have a targeted approach actually. You go to each level, then when it's time to now bring them together, you know that they have understood what you're doing at each level. So it will be easier for you to now synchronize and have one beautiful message or one with beautiful communication based on your research findings. But as I said earlier, ensure that it aligns with their policies and their frameworks so that you would now craft a standardized system to communicate. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. Okay, we'll take Collins Okenyi.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Z. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this mind-blowing presentation. So mine is on, let's assume that you did a very nice research. Maybe you have put in a lot of work. And during the time of communicating your findings to, hey, oh yeah, no, sorry. So, and you want to present your findings to policymakers. And in the process of presenting your findings, instantly they disagree with your findings. What do you do? Because I had this experience sometime last month. I went for a conference and the young lady was presenting the research she conducted. And it happened that one commissioner of health was present in the conference. and the commissioner right there disagree with the findings of that research. So at that point, what do you do in front of the audience? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Collins, for that question. Today we are looking at policy makers. So if someone disagrees with your findings, you listen to their concerns. You want to understand the perspective they come from. So you ask them what their concerns are. And if there are any misunderstandings, you clarify. And if you have additional evidence, you can offer it, because you have, if you have a plan B, and if they're willing to listen to your alternative solutions, you can as well present that and also emphasize on the long-term benefits. But always know that you have to remain open to compromise so that you can continue the dialogue. You don't get angry and say, oh, okay, since they're not listening to me. No, you push to a certain extent. But first of all, you listen to their concerns. It means that at a point, there was no communication. So that's why I said initially that you have to do an audience segmentation. You have to know who your audience is, because there are preconceived notions. You have to know, okay, I'm going to policymakers, and there could be potential biases because they have perspectives. And those judgments they have is what will determine how they would accept or reject it. So you interpret your findings based, you have to do a lot of research on who you're going to meet so that you don't end up being rejected. And even if you're being rejected, you have to listen to their concerns. I hope that answers it. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. Okay, we have a few questions in the chat box, but before I take those questions, please let's not forget to click the link for the feedback session, feedback survey rather, on today's session, and make suggestions to us on how to make this webinar session better. Thank you very much. We have a question from Maurice Johnson. Apart from communicating the research findings, how do we build trust with our audience within the short time possible? Apart from communicating the research findings, how do we build trust with our audience within the short time possible? Dr. Zainab?
All right, thank you so much for that question. So trust is something that we build over time. And when you say short, that's quite relative, because before you gain trust in people, there are a lot of things that they do or you do or their behavior. So when communicating research findings, first is be transparent, be honest in your communication on your research findings. Don't say what you did not find. If you found it at 0, tell them you found 0. So if you found it at 1, tell them you found it at 1. And always ensure that you share accurate information. You share only facts, because by the time people realize that you're not sharing facts, they will not trust you, and they will not even listen to you next time, be it a policymaker, be it the media, or be it the general public. But when they trust you, they look forward to listening to you. They look forward to reading from you. And when you make mistakes, you admit it. That's a factor that actually consolidates trust between people, between your audience. And as well, you have to consistently engage your audience. Let them know that you are there. You listen to their concerns. You address their needs. And if you are a promise maker, you ensure that you deliver on promises that you've made. But we are researchers, and we are not people that make too much promises. We make promises to go and conduct research, and we now translate our findings to the non-scientific audience. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. So I'll take the second question. When you have diverse audience, how do you craft your communication to meet the needs of the different audience? When you have diverse audience, how do you craft your communication to meet the needs of the different audience?
Okay, thank you for that question. So we have diverse audiences, even in the home front. And I have 4 children, and they're diverse people. They're all diverse. I have relatives. Everyone is diverse. People think differently. People do things differently. People have different norms. People have different communication styles. People have different tones. People have stories that actually resonate with them, as I mentioned earlier. So for your diverse audiences, that is why your key thing is to do an audience analysis. I would always repeat that, because if you do not segment your audience, you do not know who your audience is, you will not know how diverse they are. And when you do that, you ensure that you use clear language, you use a language that resonates with them, and you could also have multiple communication channels. For instance, last week, we started translating the One Health Messenger newsletters into Hausa. We're in the process of other languages. We're doing Yoruba, we're doing Igbo, and other Nigerian languages as well. So you ensure that you give them relevant examples that actually resonates with them, with each subgroup. If I get your questions, you're talking about subgroups, so you have to, but in as much as you're doing that, make sure you don't dumb down your message or your research findings. You have to maintain your core information, because that is your objective, is to maintain core information. Even if you want to simplify it, oversimplify it because they are diverse, always maintain your core message. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. That question was from Rufina Medun Oye. I hope that has been answered adequately. I'll be taking Dr. Yahya Disu, but I would just like to point it out to us again that there is a link in the chat box for a feedback on today's session. We would appreciate your insight, your suggestions into how to make this webinar session better. Thank you very much. Dr. Yahya, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, good morning once again. I just want to contribute to some of the questions that was asked to build on what Dr. Zainab said. For the politicians, the colleague that asked that he had an experience and then the policymaker was not comfortable with the findings. I think one of the things you can do from my own experience is when you have findings, I'm sure you have a range of findings from interesting ones. I mean, the one that is favorable to them and the one that's not favorable to them. So apart from what Dr. Zema said, that doing your analysis to understand them, their preferences and so on, you start from what you think is favorable to them from your findings. They will be very happy. They will open up their defenses to you. And then you move, just like Dr. Zema said, move from known to unknown. Yeah, you know to them what is acceptable to them. You start with that, they open up, then they will now be ready to accept the other ones out. And the way you also frame it when you are presenting it, that we also need to improve in this area, or this area also has potential to give us this if we can do this, because currently this is our status here. The man will say, oh, wow, tell me why. He will be interested in addressing that. That is then for the trust, you want to build trust within a very short time. Just like the presenter said, trust is a long-term thing that you start. But sometimes you find yourself in a situation whereby you don't have existing relationship with these people, but your credibility scores. Sometimes they might have Googled you to find out who you are in terms of your expertise with regards to that subject. So if some will have done that, some may not do that. You could, when you want to do your presentation, quickly talk about your experience to establish how credible you are in this, or people you have worked with and that they know to be credible. So that can also let them trust you. Then also, apart from stating the facts, the evidence, also show them that you're a human being by also highlighting some things you don't know. And then they will look at you that, oh, yes, this person can come out to tell us he doesn't know. This is what we know, or this is what we don't know. And that can also help to like, okay, at least he's honest enough to tell us. So whatever you're now telling them, yes.
Oh, hello?
Yes, we lost you for a few seconds.
We can hear you.
Okay. So what I was trying to say, I was now on the trust questions, how to establish trust within a very short time. I first said, everybody has credibility score. It may be known to your audience, they may have researched it, and then if just don't assume that they have researched, they know about it. You can mention when you want to start your presentation, some of the key achievements you have made. It's not that you are bragging, you just like make it in the context of your presentation, or people you have worked with that they trust. And they know, oh, this guy worked with this person. Oh, that's fine. Oh, you work with this organization. Okay. So that's one. The other one is, apart from stating the facts, just like Dr. Zainab said, in the evidence, you also let them know things that you still don't know. As in, facts show us, findings show us that this is what we know, but this is what we still don't know. So that, because you are honest, they're likely going to receive you, as in to say, oh, if this guy is honest, then whatever he's telling us, we're going to believe him. And they, of course, make it participatory as we are talking. Even you know the answer, you let them also provide. So when they see that they are participating in your conversation, they are asking questions, and then most likely they see that, oh, we work to the answer together, even though you are the one guiding them to it. So the last one is diverse audience. Most times when you are talking to people, you have diverse audience. One of the things you can do that can also help you, apart from preliminary analysis we've done, is you know key audiences, key groups you are talking to. So when you get to a particular point, you say, for those who smoke should listen. Oh, for those who take their children to the hospital, for mothers. By the time you say that, then those who are mothers at that point in time, they will want to listen to you to emphasize that particular area. So sometimes it's good to also segment when you are delivering your speech, so that when you get to that point, when the audience knows that you are talking to them, they pay more attention by the time you mention for so. So if you have like 3 key audiences, of course, don't go and mention everybody. You mix up things. Don't go beyond 2 to 3. By the time you say that, the others will start finding, how does it affect me? They will ask questions that you mentioned this, what about this? Then you have opportunity during question and answer session to address that. Or you say they should follow you up after the presentation. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yaya, for your amazing contributions. I've learned a lot. And one of the things I learned so much, and I think I'll begin to put into practice, start from common ground before you go into your opinions that differ. So there's a question from Rashid Nuruddin. How do you fact check fake fact checking sites? How do you fact check fake fact checking sites, Dr. Zainab?
Thank you so much, Mr. Rashid Nuruddin. So for fact checking sites, I don't know the sites to fact check, but I know I don't use them rather. But I know that some people even use ChatGPT, some people use factcheck.org, but I'm not really conversant about that. But for fact checking, what I do personally is I verify against credible sources. I use peer-reviewed research, expert opinions, and as well as official reports. Because some people will send out information which is not official, and you go to organization, you go to their website and you get official reports. So, but for the sites, honestly, I don't know. But I know that you can fact check with credible sources through peer-reviewed research, expert opinions, and official reports, and what have you. Thank you, and over. So that you just address all those misinterpretations of your original message or from the message that people have sent out to ensure that it is true. Somebody can say 10 people died from rabies yesterday. You can fact check that. You can go to credible sources. You can go to CDC websites, WHO, NCDC. You can call in to organizations to check that, is this really true? Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. I think we've exhausted all our questions, and my question has also been answered in the multitude. Okay, we have a question from Sherifat Balog. Right.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My question is, can you use storytelling in the form of using a story that is not necessarily true just to attract people to gain their full attention before now moving to the real points of the day? I would like to give more context to that. I once gave a presentation to in a Toastmasters meeting, and I was talking about brucellosis. And so the audience were made up of lawyers, children, and different people from.
Sherifat?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. You broke out for some few seconds. Can you just
Okay.
10 seconds?
All right. So, okay, what I was trying to ask that, can you say some of your findings to an audience using untruth stories just to get their attention before now focusing on the main points of what you're trying to talk about? For once, I once gave a presentation at a Toastmasters meeting, and I was talking about brucellosis in humans, animals, and the environment. So in order to gain their rapt attention, I first started by saying brucellosis happened between a couple several years ago, many years ago, and these were local couples. They had no children. I was using the symptoms just to tell a story before now saying that I started by saying it was just like an ominous stain ravaging a village and their animals. Then I now went into the main crux of the situation, that bruise still exists in today's world, and it is known, and he has changed his name. He is now known as brucellosis. Before now focusing, is that allowed based on my audience? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sherifat, for that question. And I think I should come and join your Toastmasters club as well. Overdue. So for educational purposes and advocacy, you want to promote empathy. And that's actually allowed. That's why you have fictional narratives. And fictional narratives must be clear that your story is not factual. And what you are driving at is to educate people, is to advocate that people change their behavior to know that brucellosis exists. And your storytelling is an effective tool. But from the onset, when you're using fictional narratives, you have to let your audience know that these are fictional narratives, depending on who your audience is. So you have to let them know. And that is actually part of trust building. The person that asks the question on trust, it's part of it. You have to let them know that it's fictional, but does not water down or make brucellosis not to occur. That's situation can occur. That's why you're using that drama. So it's actually good to do that. It's for educational and advocacy purposes. And I feel it's an effective tool to illustrate your findings or your complex ideas. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. I would like to remind us that we can kindly follow our social media pages to keep up to date with our work: Instagram, LinkedIn, on Facebook, X, on YouTube, and send us a message on WhatsApp or an email at plus-circlethao@gmail.com. All the information is in the chat box. We can also click the link that has been put in the chat box to share feedback on today's session and make suggestions. Okay, so I think we have a couple of questions. This will be the last round of questions that will be taken. I'll just go through the chat box.
We have a comment from Felicia as well.
Yes. So before we take the last question from Shamsuddin Dambazao, we have a comment. Dr. Yahya says, you can use anecdotes, but let them know, as Dr. Zainab said, it also depends on how you say it. you can say, for instance, let us imagine the situation. Thank you very much, Dr. Yahya, for the information and clarification. Okay, Dr. Zainab, do you have something to say?
For closing or for the last question?
Oh no, I thought when I saw you were
Oh,
speaking,
sorry, I was
so I assumed you
clearing
wanted
my
to.
voice.
Okay, for the last question, what are the best methods for establishing a baseline for your audience to effectively pass the message? Do you think it's important for them to be taught pertinent jargon in the process of informing them? What are the best methods for establishing a baseline for your audience to effectively pass the message? Do you think it's important for them to be taught pertinent jargon in the process of informing them? Dr. Zainab.
All right, thank you, Shamsuddin, for that question. So I would always go back to the audience analysis. And if you want to establish a baseline to effectively engage your audience, you can conduct surveys, you can do focus group discussions to understand their demography, to understand their knowledge level, to understand their needs, to understand their attitudes and beliefs. And you can also administer, there are tools that you can administer. You can do quizzes to understand things around them so that you'll be able to segment and tailor your messages. Then, do you think it's important for them to be taught pertinent jargon in the process of informing them? Well, even as much as you want to do that, you don't want to overload them, because then you're a non-scientific audience and you don't want to start telling them technical jargons. At the end of the day, you would end up digressing from the actual message that you want to pass to them. That's why you will take them in bite sizes. You will not give them too much technical jargons, even though there are things that they must know before you send out your messages. For instance, if you're sending it out to the public, there are things that I have to tell them that, okay, this is what this means, because I was not able to find it in literature to the simplest time, or because if I translate it or if I break it down from complex to simple, I would water down or dumb down my findings. So if you have time, you can do that, or depending on the audience you are going to. I hope that answers the question. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab, for this amazing session. You mentioned something about the closing remark earlier, so I think I would like for you to take your closing remark at this
Well, I just
point.
want to say a very big thank you to everyone that is present here, my family members, my friends, my mentors. Thank you so much, Dr. Yahya Disu, for the mentorship. I really appreciate, and thank you, Professor Ilesomi, for having me here. And thank you, everyone, once again, and I hope we do more of this. And
Okay, Dr. Zainab, we can't hear you. Please, can we all hear me?
Yes,
We can
hear
Yes.
hear you, but we can't hear her.
Okay.
We can hear you, but we can't hear her.
Okay, I think we lost Dr. Zainab. Okay, I don't think she's back yet. So before we go, I would just like to reiterate that you can follow us on all our social media platforms, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube. You can communicate with us via email and WhatsApp or phone call. All these details have been put in the chat box, and also please let's endeavor to fill the survey form that has been put. It would enable us to do better and to improve these beautiful webinar sessions that we have. So at this point in time, we would bring this webinar session to a close. Do have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.